morning, everyone. Good morning. Good Sabbath and the full moon. Uh, Last night spoke the words of the testimony. The great witness, the Lester Light, spoke the testimony. We have begun. It's on. The Feast of Tabernacles, Hag HaSukkot, is officially underway. We have 7 days returning to the 7 days of creation, returning to the garden. We have the species. We have the change in the atmosphere. We have the sense of transformative, transcending life, hope, and peace, and most of all, joy. So welcome to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all those who are in presence here enjoying this Sukkot day with us, the first of 7. Tony, it's so good to have you back. It's always a pleasure when you can come back into town and spend some time with us. I know I'm just not the only one blessed that the people on the camera, behind the camera, are saying, "So, Tony, good to see Tony again." And so just greet them any way you want to, and let's just get her started.
Well, hello, everybody. Big God bless you to everybody. I'm excited. And I mean that. I'm really excited. This is one of my favorite times of the year. This is the most favorite time of the year for me. And we've come a long way to arrive at this point. And it's so exciting. And I'm glad that all of you were able to take the journey with us this year. And I pray that you've been gleaning from the fields as we have and just enjoying yourself. But more than that, I pray that you are absolutely becoming that garden enclosed. There's so much in your life that God could visit and experience throughout this journey, and it's so exciting. So we're ready to dive into this. I was telling Papa Pete just a minute ago, good luck trying to get through all of this. There's so many touch points that we could really bring out. But for me, rehearsing the fullness of joy, what a way to start this portion. So I'm going to give it back to Papa B and let him launch into this rehearsing the fullness of joy.
You know, every year we say the same thing in the Hebrew tradition. This is Ziman Simhatenu. This is the season of our joy. And then we wink and we move on. Not this year.
Yeah.
No, this year, this is the season of our joy. This is Simcha, the Zaman Simhatenu. And if it's not, the world is going to be missing a whole lot that it's supposed to be receiving from the people, from us as people. So this idea, when I begin to go back, and I hope you all have spent some time in the preparatory season. We've had 4 days since Yom Kippur to go back and hopefully begin to look at what the Torah says about Sukkot, what Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah, says about Sukkot, what the book of John, what Yeshua said about Sukkot, and therefore begin to get the picture of what is the overriding theme of this particular season, this particular play act, the act of the play of the great passion play of God. And it comes out resounding if you start looking at all these passages. All of them say the same thing, and they say it over and over again in many different ways with many different vocabulary words in Hebrew. But the word is this: rejoice. Rejoice. Rejoice from inside out. Rejoice because you can rejoice, because you have something in you that is rejoicing. And we look around the world, and it doesn't take long to hear the voices saying, why would we rejoice? Look around you. The world is full of pain and sorrow and anguish and wars and rumors of wars and pestilences. And hey, the President of the United States has got it. I mean, what can you say?
Right.
The world is this realm, and the people are mad at each other, and the movements are combating one another, and this nation's rising against that nation, and all earthquakes and storms and fires are raging, and why would you be happy? Why would you rejoice?
Right.
You're not getting it. And the Holy One says, no, they're not getting it.
Yeah.
Do we have a reason to be glad?
Yes.
Do we have something that is above and beyond the wars and the rumors and the wars, the political intrigues, the arguments over this and that movement? Do we have something more, or don't we? Is there something that we can do to tap into this beautiful resource called joy?
Yes.
The joy of the Lord, I mean, most of you know this. You know how this ends? The joy of the Lord is our strength.
Yes, sir.
No joy, no strength. No joy, no impact. No joy, no testimony. No joy, no transformation. No joy, no garden. No garden voices, no garden fruit, no garden life. So we must tap into this joy. And this is our season to tap into joy. So we ask questions this time of year. Are you a happy person? I mean, I remember going through psych, my courses and my training. I was a psych minor. And one of the things they learned, all these personality profiles. You get personality profiles, and there's the sanguine, and then there's the melancholy, and there's I forget all the others. And it's like, I can't be happy because I'm a melancholy. I'm a melancholy whatever. Because you hyphenate it, and you mix them together in this process. But here's the key. Here's the secret. Here's the mystery. The Spirit, the Ruach of the Holy One. The Spirit of the living God that dwells inside of you is not a melancholy. He's not even a sanguine.
Thank you, Lord.
He is eternally full of joy because he knows the end from the beginning.
Yes.
He knows the stages and the protocols of the journey. And to the extent we get our anti-joy stuff off of us, this is the season of casting off anti-joy. We don't have to make joy. We don't have to manufacture it. Matter of fact, it's a waste of time to try. Joy is something else. Joy is the actual atmosphere where the Holy Spirit moves, broods, and acts upon life, upon interacts with the world. That's the atmosphere. It's a heavenly atmosphere. We have 2 seasons every year where we have to focus on one thing. And the 7 days of Passover are one of those seasons. And we begin to awaken to what I call emunah. Well, actually, it's not my words. That's an ancient Hebrew expression that we translate as faith and with a lot of lacking. But for 7 days, during the days of unleavened bread, we have to unleaven emunah. We have to unleaven, we have to cast off everything that is not emunah. All the stuff, the fear of men, the fear of government, the hatred of bondage, the anger of ethnicity between different ethnicities. The Egyptians did this to us, and the other nations are more privileged than we are. We're hated because we're just who we are. We have to cast off everything that is not emunah, is not a consciousness of the goodness of God and the plan of God that transcends all our present circumstances. We have to cast that off for 7 days every spring in the Northern Hemisphere. Every spring in the Northern Hemisphere, we spend 7 days casting off everything that is anti-emunah. Well, in the fall, in the Northern Hemisphere, we spend 7 days similarly casting off everything that is not joy.
Yes.
We have to take it out. We have to take it out. One nasty thing, one attack, one stronghold at a time.
Yes.
Of everything that is not joy. Because without joy there is no testimony. Without joy there is no strength. Without the joy of the Holy One there is no story to tell. It is a story of joy. So as we start the 7 days of anti-joy, of taking all the anti-joy things of life and stripping them off like peeling an onion one by one. What is it that is your anti-joy, that is the first anti-joy that you will come across, the first source of anti-joy? And Tony, I'm going to kind of throw this into your bailiwick in just a minute. I'm going to ask you to kind of be talking about some of the things. You can use it personally. You can. I know what your history is and what your background is as far as your knowledge of the Scripture. So I will let you use it either way you want to do, or both. But let's talk about what are the elements of anti-joy. And as you're sitting on the other side of the camera, as you're sitting in this room today, I know this about you, and you know this about you and your fellow men. We are all bombarded constantly with elements of anti-joy. Trying to take away the thing that the Holy Spirit, the gift of the Holy One, the breath of God that we got on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Teruah, the breath of God that we celebrate, it is joyful, but the world around us is not. The world around us has all sorts of reasons to tell us why we shouldn't be joyful, why we should not rejoice, what all's wrong with the world. So, Tony, that's that little introduction. I'm going to kind of throw it in your lap, and let's talk about some of these things so that our friends can begin to peel off that onion.
I like that you're using this anti, because that's what it is. It's opposed to our joy. It comes, it attacks our joy, these things that we're going to be talking about. I love this time of the year because you see all of the different writers of the Scriptures come together, and they're all singing this same song. But in Galatians chapter 5, this is a good place to kind of look at that. And it's Paul talking to them about the works of the flesh versus the fruit of the Spirit. And these are some anti-joy type things. And so in Galatians chapter 5, in verse 18, he starts with this, and this is a good picture of it. But if ye be led of the Spirit, you are not under the law. We can start right there, being led of the Spirit, because when we're not led of the Spirit, that leads us to anti-joy type experiences, because when you're not led of the Spirit, you're led of the flesh, right? And that's going to get you into these other things. He says, so now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulation, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envying, murder, drunkenness, revelings, and such like. And so these are just some of the things Paul listed that, would take away your joy, or will keep you from tapping into the joy of the Spirit. So one of the things that you say here is we can't achieve joy or emunah on our own, right? We have to have the Holy Spirit to do that. And so a lot of us, and there are voices, all these things that I gave have voices to them. They have prophets, they have preachers of them, they have those that declare these things. And so actually the culture that we're living in right now is a culture of anti-joy, in that it preaches and proclaims these messages, right? So,
and the thing about what it does, it not just preaches and proclaims these messages, it just doesn't, and it doesn't call them anti-joy. It calls them joy. Adultery. Why would you commit adultery? Why does the TV, why does the entertainment, why the movies keep suggesting to you that you are not satisfied in your relationship with your spouse? And you would be more happy, you would be more fulfilled if somehow you could have a relationship outside that marriage and test the waters in some way and maybe get more respect, or maybe get more honor, or maybe get more fun, or just having something fresh and new. Why is it? Because they tell you that's joy.
right.
It's not just that they tell you you shouldn't be happy. Right. It's that the fact that you should be happy the way we tell you to be happy. Same thing with the other things that are mentioned. Why do people tell you you should be angry? Because they tell you you would be more happy if you were angry. You would be more joyful if you were outraged at what somebody did to somebody somewhere, or what we can make you believe somebody did to somebody or said about somebody somewhere. Outrage becomes your sense of, okay, I can be happier in my life if I'm outraged about something. If I can blame somebody else, if I can find somebody to blame, I will feel better about myself. I will now find joy in myself because I'm not like that. I'm not like. And you can put a political figure in there, or you can put a religious figure in there, or you can put a government or a educational institution person in there, or an institution in there, or an authority figure of any variety in there, and say, I am not like that. This is the prayer of the Pharisee. Well, I may not have everything, but I'm not like that. I'm not like that guy. That is the sense the world keeps telling you. This is the anti-joy propaganda. The anti-kingdom joy propaganda is you will find your joy through finding something in this earth that you can either be really thrilled about, really emotionally charged up about, or really angry and judgmental about, and that will make you happy. Well, you know what happens? It might make you feel a little better for a few minutes, but what does it do to your relationships? What does it do to your life? What does it do to your health? Well, here's the secret, you see. Joy is not just a nice thing. Joy is the secret to your health. The joy of the Lord is my strength. You want a strong immune system. You want a strong intellect. You want a strong mind to be able to keep. You want to be able to stay focused and concentrate on things. You know what? Tony, as most of you understand, Tony is in the mental health field. And he understands, he deals with people who are in the state of depression, who are in states of agitation at all times. And what you find out is that, you know what they're missing? Well, they're missing the Holy One, which is the source of this. But they're never in joy. They may be in an exuberant state if they're bipolar. Sure. They may have a few moments when they are in this manic state, but they don't find joy in that. So, Tony, let's talk to us about the effects of joy upon the human mind, intellect, spirit, and health.
One of the things that we try to do, and you hear us talking about this a lot, is in de-escalation, we try to get the person to focus on something different, right? A lot of times when a person is escalating or when they're in crises, they have tunnel vision, right? And so they're focused on this particular thing, whatever that is. And that's the thing that's creating all of the anxiety and all of
that's their anti-joy.
That's their anti-joy. And so what we try to do in de-escalation is to get their attention away from that thing and start getting them to think thoughts. And Paul says, think on these things. We try to get them to think on whatsoever things are beautiful, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. We start trying to change what they're focusing on so that we can start affecting the de-escalation process and pull them out of crises, right? And so that's how we start reintroducing. Now, we didn't introduce them to the Messiah per se, but we tried to introduce them to another path of thinking.
Now, many of you may be thinking, has this got anything to do with me? I thought we were going to talk about Feast of Tabernacles and building a sukkah and doing all this fun stuff and recipes and that's all good and I enjoy that. We're going to talk a little bit about each of those things. Maybe not the recipes so much. I'll let the ladies and the chefs among you do that more than I do. Right. But we are talking about the most important facet of Feast of Tabernacles. And the reason the Feast of Tabernacles is the transcendent, it is the Sabbath of all Sabbaths. Mm-hmm. It is the Sabbath of the Moedim. So why is it the Sabbath? Because we're going to put on that which makes us who we really are, which is the joy of the Holy One. Yes. So, as you're sitting on the other side of the camera, as you're on by your screen, or listening as you're driving down the road, listening to this broadcast, as you are sitting at your tables, behind your tables and in your chairs, sitting here as we're all talking one-on-one today, our heart is reaching out to you. Because what we desire for you, for each of you, is that you would know what Yeshua talked about, abundant joy. The joy of abundance. And so I've called this little discussion today, the outline that I've done, which we'll never get through, rehearsing the fullness of joy in this age. In preparation for the age to come. What if a people of the Holy One, what if a part of the covenant people rose up and began to be examples, models, illustrative pictures of the joy of the age to come? What if, instead of being caught up in all the anti-joy rhetoric and emotion and fluff and anxiety of this world and its current age, what if there was a people that shook it off, that could shake it off like we shake the lulav? And at the last day, we shake off the willow and all the leaves of the willow fall off. What if we could actually shake off all the anti-joy stuff? Not just for a 7-day period. What if it became our second nature, our DNA factor? If we became known as the people of joy, the people of great joy. Now, would this be like or unlike heaven? This is a question we must ask. Yeshua kept praying, telling us to pray this prayer. May your will be done. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I'm pointing up there like that's where it is. But you all know that we're all trained to think that way.
Right.
On earth as it is. So our key, our primary purpose in life is to bring a foretaste of that heavenly realm into this world. So now we all have to decide what is the mood in heaven. What's the mood in heaven? What are the expressions on the faces? What's the tone, the intonation of the voice? I used to have this thing that God was there, and if I could see a face, if I could see his facial expressions, I'd know he was mad. I'd know he was furious, and the angels were all ticked off. And they were grabbing their sword or their hammer or whatever weaponry they had, looking for somebody to smash to fix this whole problem. Until I actually met the Messiah. And all he could do was smile at me. And all I sensed was a sense of utter joy that emanated from his being. And he came into, my story, he came into my car, and he wasn't, I just tried to commit suicide. I was heavy into everything anti-joy in my world, thinking that was going to somehow get me over and at least get me through. Whatever will get you through the night, it's all right. And all of a sudden he comes into my car, and if I would have thought about it intellectually, I would have thought, man, he's going to be mad. Man, he's going to be mad. I have done so many things. I have done the exact opposite of what he put me on earth to do. And I look, and I'm there, and the voice is gentle and calm and full of shalom and bouncing and lilting. The voice that's speaking to me is lilting with this song of beauty and his heart. And I don't feel condemned. I don't feel he's angry with me. I don't feel he hates me. I don't feel he's judging me. I feel he's inspiring me. He's coming into me. He's welcoming himself into my life in such a way that my total countenance transformed and changed. And my approach to life, my view of everything changed. I hope you know that feeling. When suddenly he begins to touch you, heaven begins to touch your life. Heaven begins to touch your heart. And suddenly you look around and say, oh! I remember a certain day, and the Ruach really was upon me that day, and I was in my 7th floor of my law office, and I just know I've got to get out of there. I got to get out of that office and walk on the earth and get out of the enclosed structure and go out onto the street. And I go on the street, and there's planters alongside the bank building that we're in, and I'd never really even noticed them. I just walked by them every day, right? But you know they had trees in them? Green trees. Beautiful green trees. They were the greenest I've never seen green trees like those green trees. I looked up, and the sky, there was a cloud had just left, and there was blue, the bluest I've ever seen the sky. The most beautiful blue sky was appearing, taking the place of the storms and the rain that had just happened, and the windstorm that had just hit the city. And I'm sitting there saying, this is the most, wow, how beautiful. See, that's what happens when the Holy One hits you.
Yes.
That's what happens when you get in the touch of the atmosphere of heaven. Suddenly a sense of excitement and joy and exuberance happens. But the world around you keeps telling you, that's not real. No, you need to be angry. You need to be judgmental. You need to judge everything. You need to be critical of everything. You need to be upset about this. You need to be worried about that. You need to be anxious about this. You need to be fearful about that. You need to be... You're not alive unless you're upset and angry. And the Holy One says, my spirit was placed in you and in your DNA with Adam. You don't need to find joy. You need to release joy by throwing off the bonds of everything that is anti-joy. Well, here we are today. The first day of Sukkot. What a good time. What a good time to begin to peel away all the layers, all the lattice work of the anti-joy lies that the world is throwing at us. Are you ready? Are we willing? Is this something that you see as valuable? Do you think this has something to do with the kingdom? For the kingdom of heaven is peace, righteousness.
Joy. That's it.
And I believe there's a third phrase.
It is.
What's that third phrase?
Joy in the Holy Ghost.
Joy in the Holy Ghost, in the Ruach HaKodesh, in the spirit of the holiness of the living God. Joy in it. This is, and so as we consider how we will interact with the world in 5781, how we will relate to our families, our spouses, our children, our parents, how we relate to our neighbors, how we relate to our friends, how we will relate to our enemies, how we will relate to our government, how we will relate to the business world, the economic world, the workplace, the marketplace, how we will relate to all things of creation when we think about what kind of impact we're going to have in the year 5781, which has just begun. If we're going to think about this process, the absolute essential element that we must reconnect with, must rediscover, is joy. So I long to look into your eyes and touch your hand. I wish I could be as joyful as Yeshua was when he stepped in my car. When he's at 64 Chevrolet that I wish I still had. I wish I could somehow communicate with my facial expressions and my tone of voice. I can't. I'm not like him.
Right.
To some level, I hope I'm stirring that passion in your heart, that I'm drawing you into the desire to know that joyful one, the source of all joy, the immanence of all joy, because this is our season to reconnect with that joy.
Yes.
I remember one of the first songs that I learned when I left the rock and roll world, kidding, and I began to do this Jesus movement stuff. It was something very simple, you know. I've got joy down in my heart. Deep, deep down in my heart. I've got joy down in my heart. Deep, deep down in my heart. Do you remember, maybe some of you are too young to have ever sung that. Some of us Jesus movement freaks that got caught up in that whole process, that predated us, but we sort of took it to a whole new level because suddenly it was like, I really do. Underneath all the other stuff. Underneath the drugs and the rock and roll and all, underneath the smoke on the water, man. Underneath all that stuff, I've got joy down in my heart. Deep, deep down in my heart. Well, it's there, folks.
Yes.
It's there this morning. I know there's other stuff that's trying to cloud it and cover it up and smother it and hide it. But here's the secret the world doesn't know. Those who know the Holy One, those who walk with the Holy One, those who are in covenant with the Holy One, have something bubbling up inside. I've got joy down in my heart. Deep, deep down in my heart. Now, this idea of catching the joy, we're going to talk about what the Holy One has a formula. He has a pathway. He has practical steps to help us find and recapture, reconnect with this joy.
Yes.
Last night, hey, look, I have done Sukkot. I have made Sukkot. I've made it in Israel. Hallelujah. I've made it in Jerusalem. I've made it on the hill on Mount Zion, and also in the Temple Mount. I've made it in all these different locations. But here's the deal: last afternoon, as we got close to the time when the hour began to arrive, and I knew the moon was rising, and I knew we were about to enter this process. It's going into my head. I hear this voice says, "On the first day, gather unto yourselves." What? The fruit of the beautiful tree. Now, this happens to be a lemon. You know, you'll be surprised if you ever start actually reading the Hebrew text. The etrog is never mentioned. The citron, the etrog fruit, the name of the fruit is never mentioned. It never tells you in the Torah what kind of fruit to get as far as a species or a genus. All it tells you is to take for yourself the fruit of a beautiful tree. Pomegranate, it could be, as far as what the Torah actually says. Now, older brother has used the etrog, and there's a reason for that, which we'll talk about, as being the perfect example of the fruit of the beautiful tree. Revelation chapter 22, the Revelator received this same message. Why the citron? Why the etrog is the most ultimate fruit of the beautiful tree. But as for right now, I thought to myself, I wish I had any tree that was still bearing fruit. None of my fruit trees, other than one of the ranch, I still got probably some pears hanging on the fruit, on the tree. But I had none in my yard. I had none where I could reach. I said, I'm going to go find the fruit of a beautiful tree, and the fruit of a beautiful tree is the closest I could find at this particular stage was a lemon. The nature of the fruit you have does not define how much joy comes with it. But it was a joyful thing to me. Is it beautiful or not? Yeah. This is just the fruit. The tree is very beautiful as well. Lemon tree, very pretty, and the lemon flower is sweet. Now, this whole idea of the citrus, this is part of the formula or the steps of recapturing joy. We're going to talk about this, but let's go on to the next. He says, gather to yourself, go for yourself and take for yourself the fruit of the beautiful tree. And take the bough of the leafy tree. Doesn't tell you to pick up a myrtle, a crepe myrtle, or other kind of myrtle. This happens to be from the crepe myrtle. But a bough of a leafy tree. find a tree that is just full of leaves. Sometimes for you guys in the southern hemisphere, I feel kind of strange this time of year because I know you're just coming out of winter. And I don't know how many leafy trees you've got so far, but here in Texas, boy, have we got some leafy trees. And so I find this, and I go and I find my myrtle tree, and I look at all the leaves. Look at all the leaves. And you say, okay, this is my bough. It's a bigger branch than the rest of them. My bough of the leafy tree. And so I get it, and I put it with my fruit. He didn't say to stop there. He says, now go and find the tamar, ha-tamar, the palm. This would be in Israel, it would be a date palm, but here in America, it's just this palm. This is the closest palm I could find. Thank you, Terry and Patrick, for sharing with me. This is my lulav. This is my palm. This is my tamar. And I take it, and isn't it, well, I could just spend some time with you looking at it and enjoying it, but I'll put it back down because there's one more thing he says to take, and take the willow of the brook, the arava, hanachal, the willow of the brook, the way it moves, the way it sways, the way it rolls. Take the willow of the brook and take, that's why I don't encourage people, if you have a choice, to go out and buy a lulav from somebody. It's not a matter of having a lulav. It's a matter of going and taking a lulav. In other words, it is our job, it is our task, it is our way of reconnecting with something beautiful and heavenly, beautiful and joyful, to go actually and take the limbs and take the fruit and make it a part of what we are doing. Now we're going to talk a little about that. What does this remind you of? Lots of trees. One tree with very special fruit. All the trees of the garden you may eat freely. And there's two trees in the middle. And we have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then we have the tree of life. The fruit. And so what we're doing, he said, I want you to take you back to the garden. I want to awaken the garden experience in you. It's why you don't just buy one. This is like buying a sacrificial sheep at the temple. If you can help it. I mean, it's better to have one than not to have one. But if you can help it, go do this yourself, because the process of walking, and I tell you, I walked around buildings, and I walked in a neighbor's yard, and I did whatever I could do to find the one that most represented. And there's a joy that comes with getting out of the ordinary and understanding that everything we're doing, we've got 3 trees, 3 limbs of 3 tree species, and this fruit. Now, the question you have to decide is, which of those 2 trees in the garden are you taking the fruit of? And what does it mean to you, this aspect of the fruit? I want to read to you something. I've already mentioned the Garden of Eden. Are you ready to go back to the Garden of Eden? You say, Bill, I can't do that. There's an angel, there's a cherub, there's all this process. And some people would say I'm using, imagination or conjuring things up in my mind. I'm just remembering. I'm remembering my DNA remembrance. My DNA remembrance takes me all the way back. So if you can remember the first school you went to, if you can remember your mother and your father training you up or taking you to your first whatever, your first ball game, your first trip, your first vacation, if you can remember that, then you go back in your DNA memory a little bit more and remember your walk with the Holy One in the garden. This was what you were born for. This was what you were made for. You say, is that just a trick of my imagination? No. If you believe you are a spiritual being, if you believe you are an eternal being and there is an eternal spirit that resides in you, and he has that memory, and he has it programmed into your DNA, into your thought processes, then you suddenly realize you can go back to the Garden of Eden in your DNA memory. So that's this process of going back And now the question is, what do you find when you get there? And how does this relate to the latter days? So Revelation chapter 22. We're going to get back to some of the other instructions he gives to us. But right now, I want you to get this picture. It's not just past. It's not just present. This is your testimony of the future. In Revelation 21, at the end of the chapter, oh, what a chapter. It's the angel speaks to the revelator, and he says, behold, Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, adorned like a bride for her bridegroom. And it begins to describe the gates and the streets and the structure of the New Jerusalem coming down, and talks about how there is no temple there because the Holy One and the Lamb are the temple thereof. Goes on and on about this beautiful city, awakening our hearts to this beautiful city that awaits us. And then in chapter 22, verse 1, it says, and he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. And in the middle of the street, or the passageway on either side of the river, was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every moon cycle. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Now, hello, Sukkot. Welcome to our garden experience. Welcome to our gathering calling, our responsibility to gather all that which provides the healing of the nations. This is our mission, and we reconnect with the river of life and the tree of life and the throne of the Holy One and the great temple of who we are, and we make these little shelters, these little prototypes of the temple. What is your sukkah? What is this little structure you built? Just a place to hang out and have a picnic and barbecue? No, it is your prototype. It is the first prototype of the temple. No, you're not. You are the temple of the Holy One. Build the prototype. Make it of the fruit. This is what the other thing about. Whenever he tells us to gather the fruit, to take it, the leaves, the trees, the limbs, I know we're conditioned because of tradition. We're conditioned because of knowledge, information from the world of the religious world to think what we do with these limbs, right? We shake them. This is what we do with them. Here's the strange thing. Torah never tells us to do that. Torah doesn't tell us what to do with them. Torah still says the taking is the major thing. The taking of them, because that means you are now reconnecting with the Garden of Eden. You're reconnecting with this process of the fullness of all the areas of the Garden of Eden and the fruit of the tree of life in this process. Now, so what does any historical account tell us to do with them? The only one that tells us what to do with these things is in Nehemiah, in chapter 8, beginning with verse 13. And, you know, Ezra reads the Torah. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's the Yom Teruah day, and they get the wall, and they are getting ready to build the wall, and they read the Torah, and people are weeping and crying because they realize we haven't done this. This is not. That's what we're born to do, and we're not doing these things. We're not living according to the plan of our Creator. We hear His words, and they're beautiful, but we're not living that kind of life. We got anti-joy. And so when they're anti-joy, they begin to cry and weep and mourn. And Nehemiah and Ezra look at each other and say, oh, no. No. This is not that kind of day. This is not that kind of message. This is not anti-joy. This is heaven coming to earth. This is a restoration of the garden and mentality. No, rejoice. That's when he tells us the joy of the Lord is our strength. Right there in the book of Nehemiah. For the joy of the Lord is your strength. And there, and he says, now go and make foods and share them with the poor and those who have no provision, and go to your homes. And they go, and when they leave, it says that they go and they start going through the trees. They go by the trees and they start picking branches. They start grabbing the branches and they begin taking the fruit, and they take this stuff and they go home. And it says, and they built their shelters out of them. Right. Now we know what these things are for. Now we know what all this is for. This is how you build and decorate your shelter. This is how you build and decorate. This is what you put into your prototype of the temple that you are to become. Life, beauty, fullness, okay? The fruit of the leafy tree. The bough of the leafy tree, the fullness. We begin to picture fullness and the beauty and the majesty and the tree of life and the fruit of the tree of life coming into our birth. That's what your sukkah is supposed to look like and convey. It's not just a place to have coffee, although I enjoy doing that. I enjoy having a little meal. I mean, I enjoy all those things. I enjoy having company. But here's the thing. It is supposed to be radiating with the Garden of Eden. Radiating with the tree, the boughs of the fullness and the joy and the kindnesses and the goodnesses and the shalom of God. And when you enter into it, it even says, in the halakha, it tells you that, you have to have more shade than sun. It's about shade. It's about covering. It's about this sense of cool, refreshing that you get from when you step into the shade out of the hot sun. So that's just the halakha that's been built into this process. But the key is, do you feel this sense of shalom and joy when you enter the sukkah? So this is a practical step. As you say, this is like, somebody, repeating a mantra or doing some other thing. He says, just try it. Quit trying to think so hard. Quit trying to be so intellectual that you have to reason this stuff out. Do you not realize that my kingdom is not about reason? There are many reasonable things in it, but it is not about reason. My kingdom is about emunah. We walk by faith. We walk by emunah. We walk in this direction. We walk with joy. We walk with shalom. We walk with peace. No matter what is happening around us, we don't fixate on the stuff that's happening around us because the rest of the world is doing it, and look where it's got them. It's one of those fascinating things, Tony. I think sometimes it's like, okay, there are millions of people who are really angry about everything, really anxious about a lot of things. They're fearful. They're toxic in their hatred of one another ethnicity or one another class, economic class, or one another nationality. And they say to you, come be like us. You should be like us. You should be outraged like we're outraged. You should be angry. If you're not, something's wrong with you. And the people of God at some stage in this world need to stand up and says, no. It's not me that there's something desperately, badly wrong with. Now, this will change everything. The atmosphere will shift. You will either be admired, or you will be hated, or you will be attacked, or you will be slain if they can possibly get by with it. But it will not be the same. The atmosphere will shift, and it will all be shifted around this joy. Now, have you had this imagery of Revelation 22 and this river of life? Now, go back to the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, what was the water source? Anybody remember? Remember? There were 4 fountainheads. There was Gihon. There was Ephrat. I can't remember the other names. Pichon. The 4 streams, 4 revelation streams, flowed into the Garden of Eden. They went to all directions, and from the Garden of Eden, they went and they were led all through the world. They brought the waters, the living waters of the Garden of Eden throughout the entire planet. Not just the garden was blessed by it, the entire planet was blessed by the waters, the living waters that come forth out of the garden. And so these 4 revelation streams, these 4 streams of joy, 4 streams of hope, 4 streams of life. And that's what water is to human beings and to the earth. Water is life. No water, no life. So here, that's just natural water. Now we're talking about the water that has the flavor, the scent, the texture of heaven. Yes. I mean, I like good spring water. But boy, you talking about the water of the spring of Gihon? The spring of Pishon? The spring of Efrat that comes out of the garden. Now, these issues of these 4 revelation streams, there are always 4. There are 4 species that we've just placed from the lulav, from the species that we've gathered. When we see this revelation of 4, we're supposed to reconnect with the squareness. I said the city of Jerusalem was square, was 4 square, as it comes down from heaven. And we picture how all these images begin to flow into real life, and we begin to say, okay, what are my 4 levels of inspiration? What are my 4 levels of revelation? What are my 4 sources of revelation? What are my 4 revelation streams? Well, Tony, we've had a lot of conversation about revelation streams. I remember I was in England. I was with my friends in England, and it began to hit me. I think I was in Birmingham at the time, and I was in the process of speaking to a group of people there, a blessed group of people, about the beauty of Torah and the wonders of it, and it was getting ready for Sukkot. And I remember at that particular stage, it's like the Holy One laid this in me, that the reason men are angry, the reason men are upset, the reason men are fearful, the reason folks are upset with one another and anxious about the world is because they have disconnected from the revelation streams. They are too far from the 4 revelation streams of this garden. And so now your task, Bill, one of your major tasks the rest of your life is going to be to reconnect people to the revelation streams. And my heart, my passion, my cry is to reconnect each one of you to those revelations, all 4 revelation streams. And the 4 aspects of those revelation streams that are active and operative in your world today. Well, Tony, you remember what the 4 revelation streams are? We have, obviously,
the Word of God.
The Word of God, the Torah, starting with the Torah and then spreading out from the Word of God, from the Torah. Exactly. The Word of God.
The seasons of God.
The Moedim. Moedim. But that's part of the, I'm counting that as one of the revelation streams. All the Moedim flow out of the words, out of the Torah. All of the passion play of the Moedim comes out of the Torah. So we have, that's one revelation stream. And I would liken it to Gihon, but you can say what you want to. And so the next one, obviously, is creation itself. Creation, please, listen to me here. I don't wish to offend you, but if you're used to calling things nature, consider changing your vocabulary. Nature tells you it is happening in the earth. It is a process that is just natural. It is like evolution or something like that. That's what nature is the use of the word nature and the concept of nature is a capitulation to the anti-God process. It is not nature. It is not nature. The trees that you see, the rivers that you feel, the winds that blow, this is not nature. This is evidence of the Creator. This is creation. So I'm not trying to be picky or nitpick with you, but I do want to warn you against a false god of nature. We even have a name for it, Mother Nature. You want to understand false gods, that's your biggest one. It is creation. So creation is designed to take you to a different revelation level. If we walk in, if we watch, if we move in, if we are fascinated by, if we get in the rhythms of creation, we have hit the second revelation stream. We have creation, we have the Torah. These are the two primary revelation streams of God in our day that we can connect with. I want to reconnect you with the Torah. I want to reconnect you with the beauty of creation, not nature. Nature you think you can use. Creation uses you. Creation calls you. Nature, you just go out and enjoy the call of nature. Creation calls you into your purpose and your being. Nature calls into your recreation and your enjoyment. Do you see the total shift in differences here? So these are the first two of the four revelation streams. The third revelation stream is the prophetic. It is the from the biblical prophetic to the prophetic gift of the presence of the Ruach in you, that always speaks that which is of the heavens into the spirit of man. I'm not talking about some I'm gonna foretell, I'm gonna tell a story, I'm gonna tell a future. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual, when the voice of the Holy One speaks through a human being. I mean, you can have all sorts of animosity against it if you come out of a certain background or a certain mindset. If you've seen it misused, I could care less. Here's the situation. The Holy One has chosen to use human mouthpieces. He has done it all through history, and he will do it all the way through the end of history. So you got to get used to it. Get over it and get used to it. Will there be some flesh? Yeah. Will there be some incorrectness that he provides for that? He says, look, it ain't all going to be nice and sunny and pretty, but it's going to be real. Never despise it. So this is the third revelation stream, that God will actually open the mouths of human beings and donkeys if necessary. He will open the mouths of his created sources, and he will begin to speak his own words. So connect yourself to this. I warn you in advance, you will find some stuff in that realm that you do not need, but you need to recognize it by virtue of having the other two revelation streams. The reason you're afraid of the prophetic, as we think of it, the nevah, the bubbling up of the words of the living God in you, is because you are not connected to the Torah. If you know the Torah, you will not be deceived by a false prophet. And if you know the movements and the flow and the timing and the sequences and the beauty of creation, you will not be caught up in some false prophetic movement. You won't be doing that stuff because you know the sequence. This is why it's the third revelation stream, not the first. This is why it only comes after you have indulged yourself and begin to flow in the movements of the Torah and the movements of creation. Then you can begin to receive and judge and appropriately deal with, discern what are the words of the prophets out there. And then there's the fourth. And the fourth is the most shocking of all. The fourth revelation stream is your life experience. It's the mean people around you. It's the mean person in the mirror. It's the depression. It's the news. It's the political realm. It's the economic world you have to live in. It's the fact you got to go make a living. You got to do. It's all the stuff of your personal life experience. This is why it's the fourth revelation stream. Don't try to get your revelation out of this is the way life is, so I'm going to have to deal with the way life is. No. Pull the first three revelation streams, get used to those processes, and then begin to flow in your fourth revelation stream now that those first three things are real. The first three things are real. The boughs of the tree, the leaves. Now the life becomes the fruit of the tree of life. All my life experiences now become considered and evaluated in terms of the fruit of the tree of life. And when that happens, you know what's going to happen? There's going to be joy. There's going to be great joy. And we're going to have great joy no matter what the world around us is saying, no matter what bad things are happening, no matter what famines, no matter what pestilences, no matter what wars or what rumors of wars, no matter what government is in charge, what branch, what political party, what movement is making the news, none of that stuff will change the fact that when we begin to tie into the four revelation streams, we will begin to receive and bubble up with this joy. Rejoice. Tony, we're going to read some scriptures in a minute, and I want you to kind of step into this process and share what you're thinking at this particular stage.
The joy. That's what I'm thinking. You filled our hearts and our minds with that thought and the concept of joy. One of the things that we read or during this time is Psalms. David has such a beautiful picture of why that joy exists and why he's able to tap into that joy. And one of the things that he says, preserve me, O God, this is Psalm 16, preserve me, O God, For in you I put my trust.
Tony's going to continue this in just 1 second. I want to tell you, all of you who are listening and all of you who are in this room, write down Psalm 16. Lock it into your head. You need to absorb Psalm 16 today, the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. This needs to become your song. As we sung last week, the Song of Moshe, this needs to be the song for the Week of Tabernacles. Now, with that being said, I don't want you to slip by this. This is just not just another scripture. This is our theme song for the Feast of Tabernacles.
And so David says, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I put my trust." This is that path to tapping into joy. As we get into Sukkot, as we've come through the other seasons, it's really been about getting us here, teaching us even the Sabbath, teaching us how to trust God. If we do not trust Him, if we put our trust in men, if we put our trust in the voices of the anti-joy movements, then we will not have joy. We will not be able to tap into the joy that flows like the rivers. So David understood this. He says, "O my soul, you have said to the Holy One, you are my Lord. My goodness is nothing apart from you." This is what this is about. As for the saints who are on the earth, they are the excellent ones in whom is all my delight. David understood that his joy could not ever depend upon his circumstances. They could not ever depend upon some set of laws or some set of rules. They could not ever depend on whether or not he would escape his enemies, whether or not his enemies would be successful. It could never depend on that. It had to always come from this main source. And that was David learned to trust God. And that's where I feel like Sukkot is playing such a even when we build a Sukkot, I remember us building Sukkot out here. When we build the Sukkah here, we build the building, but something I began to recognize about the Sukkah is that to some degree you were still exposed to the elements, right? And if you're going to be under that sukkah for 7 days, if you're not going in, if you're truly going to be under that sukkah for 7 days and it's going to be outside, yes, there's going to be some shade, but you're still exposed to the elements of the world, and you have to learn how to trust God. You tap into joy even when it's raining, the sun is beating up on you. But you understand a part of the joy and a part of the trust is knowing that the sukkah is temporary, right? This is not our eternal dwelling place. This is not some place we're going to live in for the rest of our lives. It's a 7-day deal. It's a temporary, just like in 2 Corinthians in chapter 5, Paul says, when this earthly tent is dissolved, when I come out of this thing, this is a temporary, but he's learned, Sukkah teaches us how to live in our skin, how to be present, how to live here right now, dealing with the things we deal with, the elements of the world that we deal with, the stuff that goes on in our bodies, the issues that we face on a daily basis, how to live there trusting in God.
What Tony's been talking about is the first few verses of Psalm 16, and the first two movements of a great opera. The first movement is, I will trust, that I have developed this trust in God. And I think, if I can read it with him, it says, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I put my trust." Now that is a allusion to Passover and the whole 7 days of unleavened bread, the whole 7 days of coming out of Egypt, because that's where we learned to throw off anti-emunah, antitrust. Our antitrust law. Our antitrust law is the laws, the instructions regarding the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's how we learn to throw off untrust, antitrust. And so he's alluding to this process. I've come through the Passover. I've come through the unleavened bread. I've come through that process, and now I've drawn back into the emunah, tapped into the emunah lifestyle, the trust lifestyle. And it says, and, O my soul, you have said to the Holy One, you are my Lord. My goodness is nothing apart from you. That is also an allusion, the second stage of the three regalim. It is an allusion to our Shavuot. It is a revelation of the Pentecost and the day of appearing at Sinai. And what did we hear at Sinai? I am the Holy One, your God, who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. And we declare, you are my God. At Sinai, we declare, you are my God. And this is what he's done. He's made these allusions here. We are in this process. This is our third step of this multiple process of development, of dividing. So we have hit this process of trust. We've thrown off anti-emunah. We have realized we are not independent. We are not independent of God. We are part of a great movement. We are part of something wonderful. And he's caught us up in that at Shavuot. And now he says, as for the saints, the holy ones, the sanctified ones who are upon the earth, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight. Now, we have this process of learning that we are to be a people of delight, a delightful people, not an angry people.
That's right.
Not a people who is somehow smarter than everybody else and can tell everybody how wrong they are. Not a critical or a judgmental people. We are supposed to be a delightful people. That is what the saints of the Holy One, those who have found emunah, those who have touched into their covenant identity as being the sons of God, these are to be a delight. You are to be. How delightful are you? Oh, don't you answer the question. If you have a spouse, let me turn to them.
Yeah.
If you have a child, let me turn to the child. How delightful is your father? How delightful is it to live in the house with your mother? How much of a delight is it to live with your brother or your sister? How much of a delight is it to live with your neighbor? Let me ask your neighbors. How much of a delight is to live in the same neighborhood next to or in the same subdivision as Tony or as Bill or as Jennifer or Susan? Or how much of a delight is it? Are we a people of delight? Well, a people of delight are people who are full of joy and who radiate joy. That's why joy is our strength. He goes on to say, their sorrows shall be multiplied who hasten after another God. Their drink offerings of blood I will not offer. I'm not going to buy into these anti-joy, anti-faith, anti-trust movements out there. I've learned to cast them off. I will not make the sacrifices to them that the media wants me to make. I will not bow before them. I will not raise my hand in a fist to them or anyone else. I will not take these false gods into my heart. I will not exhibit my body. I'm going to give them the honor of worshiping them. I will not do that for anybody. No. He says, O Lord, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup. You maintain my lot. Not the economy, not the Social Security check or the disability check,
Right.
not the
Packets.
not the COVID relief check. You, O Lord, are my portion of my inheritance and my cup. You maintain my lot. Why do we not worry so much? Because the Holy One is our lot. He is our portion. He provides for us. Give us this day our daily bread. The anti-joy, people tell you, well, you better store up a savings account. You better have your 401k. You better have your IRA in place. You better buy gold. Hey, buy a little gold, but what? Don't ever think that's going to somehow protect you.
Right.
Gold is just as useless. I remember we used to sing that song back in the movement, Jesus movement days. Had a lot of bad theology in it, but basically it said, life was, the days grew cold. Life was one. The days grew cold. A piece of bread would buy a bag of gold. I wish we'd all been ready. A piece of bread would buy a bag of gold. Yeah, get your gold. It ain't going to help you when the time comes. It's not going to be your answer. Here's the scenario. Don't trust. Some trust in horses, and some may trust in chariots. But we will trust in the name of our God and the King of our God. So he says these things. This is why we're happy. This is why we're joyful. You are my portion, my inheritance, my cup. You maintain my lot. The lines have fallen to me in pleasantness, or in pleasant places. Yes, I have a good inheritance. Now, here's the situation. If your testimony is that the lines have not fallen to you in pleasant places, then you are serving the wrong kingdom. You say, but you don't know. I'm sick. I've got this illness. I've got this. My husband left me. My wife is mean to me. My dog bites me. I got snakes, and the snakes are out there all the time. You don't know. My job left me because of COVID. I hate that government, that leader of this government, this party, that party. I hate those people. They're so mean. They say such nasty things. They're so evil. There's a conspiracy. Haven't you heard the conspiracy? Don't you know the Illuminati's doing what they're doing? Don't you understand the anti-Messiah is coming? Don't you understand that the commission, the Trilateral Commission is doing what it's doing? Don't you know? The lines have fallen to me in horrible places. If I could have just lived 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, he said, oh, you've fallen victim to the anti-joy propaganda. You think that's going to make a difference when you're supposed to make the difference. You think the Trilateral Commission is in charge when you're in charge. When the king is in charge, when the kingdom is coming to earth, you think that somehow the anti-Messiah and his mark and his number are what you need to be fixated on and worry about? No! This is the way you find, joy. Hallelujah. Joy is not looking at the time that I got left. I will bless the Lord who has given me counsel. My heart also instructs me in the night seasons. I have set the Holy One always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I will not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad, and my glory rejoices. The weight of who I am in the kingdom rejoices. You see, it isn't your joy we're worried about. It's the joy of the kingdom within you. My flesh will also rest in hope and tikva, for you will not leave my soul in Sheol, in the present state, in the state of darkness and brokenness. Nor will you allow your Holy One to see corruption. You will show me the path of life. Yes, in the world as it is right now. Yes, whatever we're dealing with, whatever we have to face, you will show me the path of life. I'm not going to die in this mess. We're going to find our way out of this process. In your presence, well, there it is. In your presence is fullness of joy. Again, what do you think his face looks like? What facial expressions do you think he's got? What do you think his emotions and his mood are? It tells you. David tells you. David has experienced it, and he knows. I know your theology tells you something different. All your churching and your preaching tells you something different. He's angry, the sinner's in the hands of an angry God. And I'm telling you, he's the most joyful being you will ever know. And in his presence, when you look into his heart, you look into his eyes, you look into his words, all you will find is joy. Because joy is the source of the life force of heaven. He said, in his presence is fullness of joy, and at his right hand, at your right hand, are pleasures forevermore. Yes. So what are your anti-joy onion skins that are covering up the joy of the presence of the Holy One in your life? This is the task of Sukkot, of the Festival of Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles each year, is to begin to recognize what has me in an anti-joy mindset. What am I angry about? What am I upset about? What am I worried about? What am I fearful about? What am I jealous about? What am I envious of? Why do I feel the lines have fallen to me in unpleasant, unpurpose? Why am I a victim Why do I feel like a victim? Why do I feel like I'm wounded? I'm a wounded, broken soul. Why do I feel these ways? Why do I not? Those are the anti-joy propaganda vessels that have been hitting you. And that we can be free. No more chains. You know, my granddaughter, Gabby, loves to sing, and she's doing this thing about worshiping and things right now. Don't know where she got that. But anyway, and so she's got the, you know, there's a song out there, a famous worship song now called No Longer Slaves. No Longer Slaves. I'm not going to sing it for her because I don't even know the song, but she does. And she has this thing where she realizes, I don't have to be a slave anymore. I don't have to be in bonds anymore. I don't have to carry these bonds, the weight of these chains, because in the Messiah, in Yeshua, in the Torah, in the life force of God, in the Garden of Eden that lives within my soul, I don't have to take on all that anti-joy propaganda into my life. I don't have to let it affect my spirit. I don't have to let it come out of my mouth or come off of my facial expressions. I don't have to let it burden my soul. I don't have any chains if I don't choose to let them be on me. Every anger, every outrage is a chain that you have let somebody put on you. Every judgment and criticism of another human being or any ethnicity, any ill will you feel is a chain, a part of the bondage. And God says, no, this is the Feast of Tabernacles, and you are no longer slaves. You are free. Well, Tony, get ready because I'm going to let you close this out in a minute. About this time of year, more than likely, I'd hesitate to be totally uncategorically doctrinal about this or dogmatic about this. But probably about this time of year, more than likely based upon the way things really work in Israel, a bunch of shepherds were abiding in the fields with their sheep, and they had built these little shelters because of the change in the weather, and they, like Yaakov had whenever he came into the land, he built these shelters at this time of year, and he had these little shelters out there. Call it a manger, whatever you want to call it. These little things where the animals could feel safe and secure and protected, where they could be inspected, where they could be milked if they were with. And so they built these little shelters, and they were abiding in the fields with their sheep. The shepherds were out there, and suddenly, a voice, something happened. Suddenly, out of heaven, suddenly a light shone. Suddenly, a brilliance took place. Suddenly something took place. And there was with them an angel of the Holy One. And he said strange things. Behold, I bring you, English, great tidings or good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. Shalom on the earth. To men of goodwill, who radiate goodwill. Shalom with those who cast off all the anti-joy and all the anti-shalom and all the anti-emunah. Shalom to us and good tidings of great joy. Well, welcome to the Feast of Tabernacles. Welcome to the 7 days of unbundling, of unburdening the anti-joy things of this world. Welcome to the season of our celebration, the season of our rejoicing, the season of returning to the Garden of Eden, reconnecting with the revelation streams, reacquainting and orienting ourselves to the thoughts and the ways of the goodness of the King. Welcome to your life. L'chaim. There's a prayer. I'm going to let you speak a minute, Tony, just a second. This is where I want to close. There's a prayer that's prayed. I don't know if I can find it. Well, I'll just do part of it. It's called the Hashkivena. Anybody know what the Hashkivenu is? I mean, in the room. If you don't, those of you watching, I'm sure some of you do. Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom v'hamidenu Malkeinu lechaim. I'll sing it again in Hebrew and I'll talk to you about it in English. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom v'hamidenu Malkeinu lechaim. Lay us down to rest, O Holy One, for shalom. And cause us to rise up and stand strong for life. L'chaim, unto the great abundance of lives. And it goes on to say, Ufrosh aleinu Sukkot shlomecha. And spread over us your sukkah of shalom. Ufrosh aleinu sukkah shlomecha. Spread over us your sukkah of shalom. And that's my prayer for all of us as we enter in the season of joy. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom v'hamidenu Malkeinu lechaim, and may you spread over us the tabernacle of your peace. Tony finishes up.
So during Sukkot, we celebrate the only asset we have that is permanent, our spiritual connection with God and his abiding love for us. And so these are 6 secrets to joy. And this is what I love the way Papa B approached it this year, just really emphasizing joy. There's so many other things that sometimes come out of these festivals that doesn't really highlight what God is saying and what he's wanting to see right now in the body. But this is it. So there's 6 of these that he lists as secrets to joy. Number 1, so when you're in the sukkah, when you're in your sukkah that you've built, or if you're in your home, or just during this time, during these 7 days, if you could just lock in on these secrets to joy. Number 1, the awareness of God's awesomeness. Number 2, gratitude. Like I told a lot of the people on Facebook, I oftentimes during this time of the year begin to go back to my garden of gratitude, and I start reading back through it and just really getting back into that place. Number 3, humility. Number 4, praise and worship. You may even begin to hear God speak and do some things in your praise and worship moment. You may even begin to hear songs and things like that he will allow you to pull into your experience. The tefillah lifestyle, I'll let you talk about that just so they know what that is.
Tefillah is obviously a Hebrew word that is usually translated into English as prayer, but we have a weird Western idea of what prayer is. Prayer, I won't have time to talk about what it, but you know what you've always thought of as prayer, or been taught prayer was. But tefillah is not that. Tefillah is not us going to God as if somehow we are the ones who need to tell him what to do because he doesn't understand, or because somehow or other we're going to bring something, make him change his will to fit ours. That's not what prayer is. Tefillah is from the word palal in Hebrew, which basically means to begin to make separations, to peel things off. It's like peeling an onion, or peeling a banana, or peeling a piece of fruit. You take the outer layers off and expose the innermost, the sweetness of the innermost being. So tefillah, whenever we to a Hebrew, what a prayer is not an instruction to God or a request of God. There may be involved with that concept, but the process is, what am I able to peel off? What part of my flesh, self-denial, what part of me can I peel off in order to make aware? And so this conversation with God is constantly about us peeling stuff off of us, not telling him what we want him to do for us. Sure. What tefillah is about peeling things off of us, the anti-joy layers, the anti-emunah layers, the anti-shalom layers, peeling that stuff off of us so that we can begin to pull into his being and become who we really are, the fruit, the sweetness of the fruit inside of us that has the seed at the core of it. That's what we're trying to find. That's tefillah. So the lifestyle of tefillah is learn to keep this going conversation with, what else do I need to peel off today? What other thought process, whatever belief system, whatever opinion, whatever attitude, whatever mood. What do I need to peel off of me before we can actually have this heart-to-heart communication that we need to have in order that I can be flowing out of the revelation stream?
And then the sixth one, and so all of those 5 secrets to joy is really important for the number 6. And many of us, as we live in today's climate, and we continue to live in this experience, and things continue to happen. This number 6 says, looking at trials as opportunities and not calamities. It's all the way we see what we're experiencing. What's God saying versus what you're hearing from people, what you're hearing from political parties or whoever. What's God saying? What's God doing? The reason that I like this seasons, or I hate to use that because that's so minute. The reason that I connect with God and flow with Him to the best of my abilities during these prophetic times is because it keeps me focused. It keeps me on task. It keeps me on the path, and it keeps me heading back to the garden. And so I don't, a lot of times things go on, and this is the first year that I've seen as much going on right now during these particular seasons. But when these things are going on, it's these prophetic seasons that keep me focused and keep me on track. I will say this, in all of our meetings in healthcare, they start the meetings with, and these are uncertain times. And I always say to them, these are very certain times, right? These are the most certain times you've probably ever lived through. There's nothing uncertain about these times. They've been written. We're totally on task. We're on time. Everything is happening exactly as He said there would. What is uncertain is how people will respond to these times. It should not be for us, because we have these prophetic times. We have this word from God that's guiding our process and pointing us in the right direction. So I wanted to give those secrets to joy, because I think that's something that we want to embrace when we're building our sukkahs and we're having those experiences.
And I will finish by basically saying this to you. If you do all the other things of Sukkot right, if you build your sukkah right according to the rabbinical traditions, make sure there's just enough amount of sukkah on top of the sukkah, and you have more shade than you have light. And if you do everything just right, and you get 4 species, you buy the best you could possibly buy, you spend the most money you possibly could spend on it. If you do all these things, you sit in your sukkah to eat or to drink or maybe to sleep at night, whatever. If you do, and you have visitors over your sukkah, if you do all the things of the stories of sukkah, and you come out with a sour attitude and with anger, and you didn't change your attitude, you didn't change your heart, then you have totally wasted this time. Now, I am calling upon you, because you see, it is time for the people of the living God to arise, to shake off the negativity of this world. We have to live here. No, we get to live here. It is as if the Holy One designed all of time and all the trial, knew that all the things that would take place, all the tragedies, the wars, the rumors of wars, the economic situation, the climate situation, all these things would happen. And He says, okay, what's the toughest time? Well, we're not there yet, but we're close. And He says, let's figure out who we want to put on earth at that particular time. Who do we want to honor with the privilege of being light in the darkest of the times? Well, hello. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's me. He chose us to live in this time. We don't have to live in this time. We get to live in this time. But we get to live in this time for a very important reason, not to be like the rest of the world, not to say the same negativity, focus on the same junk that they focus on. We are here to be a joyful, delightful people. I ask you, I call upon you, set your heart, set your mind, set all that is in you to focus on becoming the most joyful, most delightful person you can possibly be. That means you're going to let go of some stuff. You're going to let go of your sarcasm. You're going to let go of your anger, your political debate, your diatribe. You're going to let go of that stuff if you're going to be who you were put to be on this earth at this particular stage in time. You're going to have to let go of being right on some issues. Because being right is not going to solve these problems. Being holy, being light is going to solve these problems. Not being right, it's being light. So here's the situation. If you are a joyful person, what will it do for you? You will waste less time. Joyful people waste less time. They just don't get distracted by the stuff that wastes everybody else's time. It's just a natural process. Joyful people waste less time. Joyful people drink less and self-medicate themselves less. They take themselves out of the game less. That's what you do when you self-medicate. You take yourself out of the game. You sit yourself on the bench. You say, whenever I heal, I'll come back and I'll participate again. But right now, I'm self-medicating, whether it be alcohol or marijuana or some other drug or some prescription drug. I'm self-medicating right now. I'm taking myself out of the game. Happy, joyful people who get the delight of the Lord do not self-medicate themselves near as often, if they do at all. Happy, joyful people have more energy and enthusiasm. I didn't read this in the Bible. I read this in the scientific journals. Joyful people have more energy and enthusiasm for life. Don't you know it's true? Haven't you experienced this? This is the absolute uncontrovertible truth, scientifically as well as spiritually. Joyful people have more energy and enthusiasm for life. I'm reading a scientific journal to get all this process, so you want to know. Joyful people sleep better. They sleep better at night. They rest their bodies. They actually get good rest at night. Joyful people, people who delight themselves in life and in the Lord, joyful people sleep better, and they're not always tired, anxious. They're not always stressed. Joyful people eat better, eat healthier. Joyful people don't stuff with comfort food. Joyful, don't have to. You've got comfort. You don't need to stuff yourself with comfort food, with trash, with junk, with whatever. They digest their food better because they're not anxious. They're not stressed. I hope you're getting this. Are we going to make an impact, an impression upon the world? Do you want to make an impression upon your family? Just tap into this joy that's down in you in the Holy Spirit. They eat healthier. They process their food. They digest their food better. There's less bloating. There's less binging when you're joyful. They hurt less in their joints. Joyful people hurt less in their joints. I didn't make this up. This is doctors say it. Joy, it's stress that makes you hurt more in your joints. It's anxiety, it's anger, it's judgmentalism, it's critical. It's all these negative energy processes make you hurt more in your joints. Now, Jennifer, I know you're a massage therapist and a very good one, and so I might take part of your business away from you. but joyful people hurt less in their joints, in their muscles, and in their organs, and in their head. They have less headaches. They have less migraines. They have less clusters. Joyful people have this advantage over people who have anti-joy. And joyful people have fewer heart attacks. I didn't make this up, and I didn't read it out of the Bible or some old script. This is out of the medical journals. Joyful people have less heart attacks, have less heart problems. Joyful people are less toxic in their relationships. They're less cruel. They're less selfish. Why should you need to be selfish? You're joyful. Now, I hope I have just in this last few minutes revealed to you a secret of life that the Holy One has known before the foundation of the world. Before he created man, he understood, and he wants us as his people to understand we have certain secrets available to us that we're supposed to bring to the world. And the healthiest thing you can possibly do, and the most powerful, positive thing you can possibly do in this world is, first of all, get joy, awaken the joy, tap into the joy in yourself. That is why he gives us a full 7-day season of joy when our entire focus is supposed to be upon developing, cultivating, and growing, nurturing, maturing that joy in ourselves. I could actually go on about other physiological and emotional factors that are affected by joy, but I think I've made the point. I think the Holy One has made his point. When he says, in his presence is fullness of joy. What did I say the title of this was? Rehearsing the fullness of joy. In this age and in preparation for the world to come. Be joyful. Let joy happen. Strip off the anti-joy, the layers of anti-joy. Every day, strip off another layer. Every time you get a chance to sit in your sukkah, start asking the Holy One, how can I strip off one more layer of this anti-joy so that I can be the light that you set me on this world, in this world to be in this time of deep, deep darkness? Well, Tony, it's that time. They've told us. My wife has been very faithful to remind me. I have not been very faithful to keep the time limits, but I've done the best I could do under the circumstances. Look, folks, my heart is so full. It really is. And I know my message may be shocking to you if you were expecting some doctrinal thesis on tabernacles. No, I want to somehow just be a vessel that the Holy One can look into your eyes and speak about his joy and how wonderful and he sees you and how much delight he takes in you. And how he absolutely believes that by filling you with his joy and awakening the joy that's in you, you can make your world a much more beautiful place. Amen. Shalom. If you had a chance, drop a note. Let us know you were here. Give us a prayer request. One more thing. I'm not going to give you the details or the background. Abba, our Father in heaven, we love you. We honor you. We call upon you to invade the life of James. Invade his broken psyche, his broken spirit, his broken body. Invade his world of darkness and the diagnoses and the prognoses that have locked him in this realm of fear and anxiety and anti-joy and depression and put him in a situation he cannot be with other human beings. He's unsafe. Release your spirit in James. And may you do it also in all of your people. Amen. Shabbat shalom. See you next time.